Food for Thought on News Talk 760 WJR is presented by Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan and by the Food Bank Council of Michigan, creating a food-secure state. Here's your host, Dr. Phil Knight.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Food for Thought has been on the air for 6 or 7 weeks, and we've learned a few things from doing this show. We've learned the power of radio, particularly WJR, is alive and well. The listenership, the audience, the people of Michigan are listening, and we are proud to be in partnership with WJR and the entire team here. We've learned that our topic, our mission of creating food security, is top of the mind for a lot of people, and they welcome the positive, solution-oriented conversation we are having on this show. We've learned that hunger impacts every facet of life in our state. It drains our economy, it hampers our educational outcomes, negatively impacts our future workforce, threatens our national security, robs our children of their potential, and seniors of their dignity. It steals hope from the working class who are struggling with more month than money, and takes captive the minds of those who live under its constant yoke. We've learned that as stubborn of a problem as food insecurity is, we are more obstinate than it is. We've learned we must grow ourselves as leaders to solve this big, complex, multi-layered challenge. We've learned that everyone, and I mean everyone, wants to solve hunger. We've learned to create a solution, you first need to define the problem. We've had small business owners and corporate executives discuss their commitment to solving hunger. We've had a vice president with the United Auto Workers and the CEO of the Small Business Association both share their personal desire to help create food security. We realize that solving hunger begins in the field, and our Michigan farmers are stating their desire to grow and give to accomplish this mission. We've learned there are companies, big, successful companies like Farm Bureau of Michigan, who want to see this scourge lifted from our society and believe in our mission so much they came on as the sponsor for our show. We've had education leaders and the highest-ranking law enforcement official in the state proclaim on Food for Thought the need and belief food security can be realized in Michigan in our lifetime. We've learned from food banking professionals who lead a complex system of charity, transportation, food procurement, inventory, warehousing, human resources, that this mission is a worthy investment of their one handful of life. We've learned a lot in 6 weeks, and we've more to share and more to learn. You come back and be with Gerry, Brisson, and I as Food for Thought. This journey continues right here on WJR.
Welcome back to Food for Thought, sponsored by Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan and the Food Bank Council of Michigan. Once again, here's your host, Dr. Phil Knight.
Gerry Brisson is here in the studio with me, and Ken Nobis is on our WJR line. Ken is the president for the Michigan Milk Producers Association. Ken, welcome to Food for Thought.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, it's excellent to have you. I have to begin with a story. Gerry, Ken invited me to, and his team invited me to come to their state association meeting, and so I went, and it's a huge gathering. I was just astounded at how many people were there. It's a first-class event that Ken runs, and he invited me on stage, and I had the opportunity to speak to the group for a few minutes, and then I thought my job was done, and I turned around to leave, and Ken stepped to the podium, and he called me down and said, "Phil, wait, don't go anywhere. Stay right here for a minute." And I had no idea what was coming. And the next moments, Ken announced to the entire association membership and to all of Michigan, and particularly to our food banks, that the Michigan Milk Producers Association were donating 100 gallons of milk per day in celebration of their 100th anniversary.
Yeah, what a great story, and what an impactful thing to do. Milk is one of the most popular items that we have available. There's never enough, and so 100 gallons a day is a huge contribution and is making a big difference.
So, Ken, tell us a little bit about Michigan Milk Producers Association, and more importantly for our listeners, I think even, why would you guys make such a generous gift?
Well, I'll start with a little bit about Michigan Milk Producers Association. We did a year ago celebrate our 100th anniversary of existence in the state of Michigan. We market about 5 billion pounds of milk a year. It's about around 45% of the milk that's produced in the state of Michigan. And the reason that we donated the milk is that we became very aware within the last couple of years of the need for milk in the food bank system. Mm-hmm. We actually made our first contribution in 2015, and then we really ramped it up in early 2016 when we learned about the lead issue in Flint and the role that milk could play to help alleviate the ramifications of the lead poisoning, especially in children. Subsequent to that, we made several more donations, including the 100 gallons of milk a day for 365 days, to help make an impact on feeding, especially the kids in the state of Michigan that are disadvantaged.
Well, in fact, I wanted to bring that up because I remember being with you at an event in Flint on several occasions, and in fact, I couldn't hardly go to Flint without seeing you there. Michigan Milk Producers was, you didn't have to introduce yourself to anyone in Flint. You were there. You were there in the middle of the crisis, and again, I think that the contribution that Michigan Milk Producers Association was able to make was a turning point and certainly a great help toward the alleviation of that lead exposure issue among the children, especially.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about a backstory here, because we did that at our board level at Michigan Milk, mm-hmm. and it took me all of maybe 30 minutes. I had to call individually 12 different board members, and their immediate reaction was, yes, of course, we want to do it.
Wow.
But then, even more importantly, I think, we were going through our local annual meeting process a year ago when that happened. And before it hit the press, I had a meeting in southern Michigan and with one of our local association members there. And I broke the news to them on what we had done. And it was silent for just a few seconds, and then all they did is clap.
Wow.
And the reaction that I had from them and other members when they learned of it is, can we do more?
Wow. Ken, he's Ken Nobis. He is the president for the Michigan Milk Association. And Ken, that's an amazing – I loved what you just said about your board, and that as soon as you shared the need, they were all in immediate yes. Gerry, you're itching here. I can see it in you.
Well, it's one of the ways that we frame the purpose of doing Food for Thought is that in order to solve a problem, the first criteria is that people want to solve it. Well, what a great story that highlights that point. And I think it's why, and fundamentally, one of the things that makes hunger an issue that we can fix. I mean, it's I don't know anybody who says, I don't really care. When you let people know that it makes a difference, that people need it, and that it will fundamentally help people move from where they are to something better than that. I mean, lead remediation, when you think of solving hunger, do you think about that? No. But here we are right now talking about yet another reason why solving this problem has a broader effect than the problem itself. And so, I mean, I just get excited. It's hard not to get excited to hear not only the reaction of your group, but the awareness of what this is doing for the people in the state of Michigan it's just phenomenal.
Well, it's one of the best experiences I've had is serving on the board and being president of the Michigan Milk Producers Association. It just gives everybody a warm feeling for having been a part of helping to resolve a hunger and nutrition issue in the state of Michigan.
Ken, thanks so much for being with us here on Food for Thought. He's Ken Nobis, and he is the president for the Michigan Milk Producers Association. But more importantly, Ken, I want to say thank you for your life and for your investment and for your belief in this mission and for coming alongside of the Food Bank Council and our 7 food banks across the state that are committed to creating food security. So thank you for all you're doing, and thank you for what you've done, and we look forward to the future together.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for what you do. We've looked into the Food Bank Council, and that was the first choice association or group to partner with to get the milk to the people that needed it.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for being with us. This is Dr. Phil Knight with Gerry Brisson. You're listening to Food for Thought on WJR.
It's Food for Thought with Dr. Phil Knight.
Gerry Brisson is here in the studio with me, and on our WJR line, Senator Peter MacGregor. Senator MacGregor, thanks for taking the time away from all that's going on in Lansing to be on Food for Thought today with us.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks, Gerry. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, Senator MacGregor, I think we should just dive right in. I remember that you and I met at a Farm Bureau convention over in Grand Rapids a couple of 3 years ago, and I think you had your wife with you that day, and you were explaining to her the work of the food banks, and we kind of walked alongside of you. In fact, I think that we had a conversation, and you uttered a couple of questions at the end of that conversation, and I haven't gotten over those questions yet. And those 2 questions were, why not us, as in why not Michigan, and why not now? Why couldn't we solve food insecurity and make sure these seniors and these kids, these children, have access to enough food? And I have to just tell you, we all talk a lot, we say a lot of things, but those were 2 questions that have impacted my mind and my heart, and I think have really was a catalyst in shaping us at the Food Bank Council, and I can't thank you enough for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I know the Food Bank Council does awesome work in connecting resources, and you guys are logistic experts, and it's solution management. And there's a real problem out there with feeding our communities, but it's also our communities can be part of the solution. So to me, it seemed like there were some simple answers there, and it's not just being able to appropriate money. It's having someone or an organization like the Food Bank Council to kind of manage that appropriation and make sure it gets to the right resources. And you guys do an awesome job.
I think I love the absolutely solution management is what we're trying to be about. I think one of the challenges that we have in managing solutions and not only letting people know there is a solution, but really convincing people there's a problem. Now, as somebody who's hearing from people and seeing people all the time, just as part of what you have to do to be successful, what would you say to somebody that says, I don't think hunger's a problem right now?
Well, I would have to say that they need to open their eyes, and it's not just the poor; it's the seniors, it's the children in school. I mean, it's right in front of our face, and you should, if your eyes are open, you can see it every day. And so, I tell my colleagues in Lansing that there are some solutions out there that have a lot of evidence on what is working and how we are making a difference. There is the ability to get a high return on investment, and that's putting some resources towards the Food Bank Council, and I think that's kind of the direction that we've been going over the past couple of years. And when I show them the statistics that are provided by your organization to my colleagues, they have no problem at all making sure that they continue to get the resources needed.
Yeah, Senator MacGregor, thank you, because the opportunity to have that conversation with you and with some of your staff has been very encouraging to us in our work. And when you think about that, food insecurity across the board in Michigan is coming down. It's coming down for every group except one, and that's our senior population. And we've done a show here on Food for Thought to talk about some of the reasons why with Paula Cunningham from AARP. But it is exciting to see a bit of the trend coming down across the board for almost every section of our population. And I think some of that is because we have folks in leadership positions like yourself who I guess it could be a cliche, but I don't want it to be, because I think it's a great title. Is something that really impacts all the citizens of our state, and that is to have someone like yourself who is a hunger champion, someone who believes in the work, who sees that there could be an end, a solution in mind. And, I think leaders think before, they think better, and they think beyond the rest of us, and I think you've demonstrated that kind of leadership, particularly on this issue.
Well, it seems like I have the easier position out of the two of us. The way that you guys are able to use those resources, you guys are incredible responders to the need out there. And appropriating money, in my eyes, is the easy part. Actually making sure that you connect these resources to the agencies, to the food banks, to the pantries, to the need that's out there. You guys are doing the amazing work.
If you keep saying appropriating the money is the easy part, we're just going to keep coming back.
Well, it's funny you say that, because the return on investment, being on the Department of Health and Human Services Appropriations Subcommittee, we're talking $1 billion here and there on different programs. I mean, the total, it's a $24 billion state appropriation for the full committee, and yet when we appropriate $250,000, we're not talking billion, we're talking thousands of dollars to food banks, and you have the return on investment that is over $2 million. It's absolutely amazing for the use of those tax dollars to solve the problems that you guys are doing. I wish every program was like that.
Well, I think there's even more opportunity, right? And that's part of the reason why we think hunger is solvable. It is a return on investment, because not only where the food comes from, like through the MASS program and helping Michigan farmers while we're feeding people that need that extra bit of help, that's another example of a return on investment. It leverages a lot of different resources that are already at play to drive a solution. And so, of course, we believe it can be done, and part of the reason is because we're putting heads together with you and your colleagues and farmers and business people and saying, hey, we want to do it, we can do it, so let's do it.
It's just amazing how you guys and your partnerships connect those resources. I'm thrilled that we have partners like the Food Bank Council.
He's Senator Pete MacGregor. He is from the 28th District, and he is what we would affectionately known at the Food Bank Council and here on Food for Thought as a hunger champion. He cares so much for not just the citizens in his own district that he serves, but really the conversations that we've had, Senator. It's about the entire state and how we can come together as a public-private partnership and pull the resources together to make sure that people have access to healthy, nutritious food. We thank you for your belief. We thank you for your commitment. And most of all, we thank you for being on Food for Thought today and taking the time away and being with us.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Gerry. I really appreciate being on the show.
Great to have you. Gerry and I will be right back here on Food for Thought here on WJR in just a moment.
You're listening to Food for Thought with Dr. Phil Knight. Brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan and the Food Bank Council of Michigan.
Senator MacGregor, Ken Nobis, what do you think, Gerry? I mean, those two gentlemen, leaders from the state, but yet they're entities that they represent working together to help us in our mission.
Yeah, and it makes it so clear why it's important for people who you wouldn't necessarily put together to be working together. And I love the way Ken talked about milk was a vital component of what needed to happen in Flint as a result of the water crisis. When you think about Flint, you don't think about milk and you don't think about hunger first off, right? But here we have the work that was done on the ground with the Food Bank of Eastern Michigan, and I know you can talk a lot more about that than I can, Phil, but you've got that work on the ground coming together with a senator and other legislators who really understand the link between food and food security and solving a lot of problems up to and including lead abatement.
Well, you're exactly right, Gerry. And so kind of how this unfolded was after the crisis hit and the governor talked about an appropriation to help with the problem. The very first appropriation that came out, I think it was around $28 million or somewhere in that. There was a group of us in Lansing that represented these organizations. So the Food Bank Council of Michigan representing the Food Bank of Eastern Michigan, Michigan State University Extension, that neither of those entities had to introduce themselves in the city of Flint. Because while we're talking about lead abatement and the foods and how we work together to distribute and to educate, the real thing that we had, the commodity that we traded on first, was trust.
Absolutely.
Because there wasn't a lot of trust. If you'll think back to those days, it's like President Reagan said, the scariest words you've probably ever heard is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
Yeah.
So, it was a low trust culture there in Flint. But the two entities that really had the people's trust were the food banks and the Michigan State University Extension. So we did what we do best, and I think what you guys do better than anybody across this state, and actually I could say across this nation, and that is your distribution network, the ability to move from point A to point B what people need. Now, normally in our day-to-day work, that's about food security, right? But this is in the midst of a crisis. So it wasn't just food, it was a certain type of food, and then water on top of that. And I think some of the challenges there were just the glaring scope of the need. But Food Bank of Eastern Michigan had 100 distribution points in the city of Flint already. So they were dealing with this problem, and then here comes MSU Extension with the nutritional education, which some of that came from Cooking Matters. And we know that you're the distributor, that is Gleaners, is the one state distributor for Cooking Matters, and you couldn't do one without the other. You couldn't distribute the food that helped in the lead abatement without the educational piece. And it was two organizations that came together with a lot of other groups as well, but everybody worked in their strength.
And here again is the power of keeping people in the loop and making sure that there's this trust built, as you said. Mm-hmm. When things had to happen, the state needed a way to spend the money it had to solve the problem of the people that had already consumed too much lead. And their diet turned out to be one of the most significant ways they could make a difference. And so there were organizations in place making that difference who could receive those funds. And people like the Dairy Association and the Michigan milk producers,
right,
who could make donations of thousands and thousands of gallons of milk.
Right.
But if you don't have the networks in place and you don't know who to take those resources to, you just can't get it done. So again, the Food Bank Council of Michigan being a critical catalyst for all those relationships for all of us in the state. And we don't know when the next crisis will happen exactly or what it will be. But what we do know is we continue to build solutions around the problems we face. We apply excellent techniques and we get great results.
So what was cool, though, and I think this show illustrates it with Ken Nobis from the Michigan Milk Producers Association, who, he had one thing, but it was a very critical thing. It was milk that was high in calcium and the other foods high in iron, high in vitamin C. And he said, this is what we can do to help solve the problem. Could he solve the whole problem? No. He had the product, but he didn't have the delivery. And that's where we were able to come in. So everybody working in their strength. And then, you have Senator MacGregor, who is a true hunger champion, who's saying, hey, I know where we got to be careful how we spend this money. We got to make sure that needs are met, that the return on our investment is high, and that people who are partnering with us are competent, they're professional, and they're going to be able, and that doesn't just involve moving stuff from A to B, but you got to have an accounting system there, a warehouse system, so that you know where what is at any given time. And we will have that kind of competency. That's just what you guys do every day.
And, the continuous learning involved in this is another really key point. So as we went through the water crisis in Flint and learned about the foods that families need in order to overcome that kind of a crisis, it deepens our thinking about the importance and the way we need to do our work. So we have, just at Gleaners, initiated a program to get 10 times the amount of milk through our network as we were able to do before. And it was from that learning, right? Now, we're not pinpointing a lead problem, but by learning that milk not only is a food people want and need, that it's low fat, high protein, it has a lot of other good things in it. It's part of a really healthy diet. And by being familiar with people who would be willing to help, like the milk producers in Michigan, we can put that all together and say, let's now work this into our regular stream of operation, explain to people the impact of that, and that becomes how solution building happens, right? You keep learning, you apply those learnings, you let people know the difference they can make, and they will make a difference because they want to solve this problem.
I think you're right. And, it's people who have some self-awareness, Ken Nobis and the Michigan Milk Producers Association could not solve the entire problem in Flint during the water crisis, but they could certainly contribute. And a key strategic contribution. And I think that just bodes well for all of us. I go back to, certain quotes that I tend to use and reuse a little bit, but, I think back to the greatest mistake somebody ever makes is when they choose to do nothing because they think they can only do a little.
Yeah, and I will say this again, Phil, the importance of the work of the Food Bank Council of Michigan is being a catalyst for so many relationships with people who can do their part. And we have food security across the whole state, and us food banks on the ground are doing our part, right? And to varying degrees of little, whatever little means, right? We know we have a lot more work to do. We're going to keep doing it, and we so appreciate you bringing these relationships to us so that we can make a bigger difference.
Well, I got a pretty easy job, to be honest about it, because the incredible work that are done by the 6 food banks and the 1 food rescue operation is a difference maker. And what we're discovering is that the work that you do is applicable to other areas. And I think the Flint Water Crisis is one of those illustrations. Now, we don't want any more crises, but if they do come, and they will come, we're ready.
Absolutely right. And we know there's people standing beside us, people like you who are listening right now, willing to stand beside us as we walk on this journey, really understand the impact of our work, and do the things that make the most sense to help and heal our community.
There's no doubt about it. So it's an exciting time, really, to be having these conversations. And I think we learn, and we get ideas, and we innovate, and and then we fail, and we learn more. But we're going from one success to a learning experience, and we're learning how this work can be done and how to go to the next level of food security. Gerry Brisson, Phillip Knight. We'll be right back in just a moment.
It's Food for Thought with Dr. Phil Knight. And now another Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan moment.
I have on the phone with me Luke Throne, who is the president for the Jackson County Farm Bureau. And Luke, you guys do something really unique in order to help solve hunger in your community, and you do it through a tournament. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, that's correct. We do a cornhole tournament. It's hosted by the County Young Farmer Committee. We do it at the county fair every year. It's a tournament takes a couple hours during fair week. We invite all the 4-H'ers and any attendees at the fair who want to attend. They do pay an entry fee. That entry fee helps to go to the food bank. And then our major money maker is actually sponsors.
Right.
We send out letters to sponsors a few weeks before the event and give them the opportunity to donate some money in exchange for some advertising for their company. So we have...
Go ahead. Yeah.
We have 3 levels of sponsorship. The first level, you donate $50 and you get your name on the T-shirt that all the attendees get.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next 2 levels, you get progressively higher in the dollar amounts and the amount of pieces of advertising you get.
So I'm just going to throw this out here, Luke. This is Luke Throne from Jackson County, and he's the president for the Jackson County Farm Bureau. And I'm just going to throw this out here that I'm a pretty darn good cornhole player. So I don't know if there's teams or is this individual competition, but I'm thinking I might want to get in on this.
Okay, yeah, it's a 2-person team. And we play the normal National Cornhole Association rules. And so during Fair Week, which is usually the first week in August for Jackson County,
right? You
come on out to the fair, sign up at our booth, and you're in.
Cool. Well, hey, do you have a partner?
I actually don't get to play. I'm usually the one running the game, so I'm usually on the microphone coaching everyone and keeping everyone on track.
All right. Well, I might bring a ringer in then, and we come down for the cornhole tournament there at the Jackson County Fair, sponsored by Luke Throne, who is the president for the Jackson County Farm Bureau. Luke, tell me just really quick, why do you guys do this in order to benefit the food banks and pantries in your area?
Well, as farmers, we are inherently concerned about feeding the hungry and feeding the people in America, so that's our day-to-day job.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just looking for a way within the county to, 1, reach out and let people know we're here, let people know about the Farm Bureau and what we do, and 2, feed the hungry, and 3, maybe get some young farmers involved.
Excellent. That's
4-H and FFA.
Man, that's great. Luke, thanks so much for giving your life to this great cause of making sure people are food secure. And we recognize here on Food for Thought that solving hunger starts in the field. He's Luke Throne. He is the president for the Jackson County Farm Bureau. Thank you for being on the Farm Bureau Moment. And Gerry, I shared a joke earlier that scariest words you ever hear. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. But there's really another, some people laugh, but there's really a whole nother side to that government can do things for us that we can't do for ourselves. And right now there's such an animosity, even on social media and in conversations with people, with this political climate. And it's really hard to get anything done, and now we got a whole group of people who think compromise is not a good strategy, and it's really how things happen, particularly in the political world. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think that when you look at what having a point of view really means, right? And politics is all about points of view. A point of view is where our passion for something comes from. Mm-hmm. And as we get an educated point of view, that passion can be deepened and broadened. And with that, you need involvement, especially the bigger the problem is to tackle. Your point of view has to deepen and broaden enough to encompass enough people so that the problem can actually be solved. And when your point of view becomes narrower and narrower in terms of the number of people that can participate in it, the less likely it's actually going to solve a problem. So politics ultimately is a good thing as it drives us to deepen our point of view and to broaden the number of people involved in the conversation till we can get to a place where a problem can actually be solved.
Hey, one of the premises for Food for Thought is, can we talk? Can we have these conversations? And I really liked what Senator MacGregor here was on. I don't think when you listen to him, you could tell whether he was a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. But you could tell that he cares about children. I think, too, that as the Food Bank Council of Michigan and our board of directors continue to work on the creation of the blueprint to solve hunger, as we further define the problem, we can better create the solution. And part of that solution is looking at the needs of people and being able to say, because this person has this need. Now, the crisis in Flint was acute, and we could see it readily, and we knew what the needs were, and we rallied to that point to create the solution. And I'm talking specifically about the lead abatement and the foods and how the partnerships came together and worked together. In fact, I was in D.C. just this week, and a gentleman who works for MSU Extension, we were at Debbie Stabenow's Michigan Coffee Hour, and we looked across the room and we knew each other, and we went over and we saw each other, and we shook hands and we gave each other a hug, and it was two of us, one from MSU Extension and one from the Food Bank Council, who this crisis brought together and created a bond that we miss in our society when we're trying to solve these problems.
Absolutely right. And a great example of how spending time with people, solving a problem that we can all agree needs to be solved, helps you solve the next problem too.
It does. And politics has a role to play, and I'm happy that we were able to have Senator Pete MacGregor on with us to illustrate the positive side of contribution from the political scene. We haven't had a lot of examples of that, and today was a great example.
Awesome.
So here's some food for thought. This mission of creating food security unites us as few other causes or ideals are able to do. Everyone, and I mean everyone, wants to solve hunger. No one, and I mean no one, wants to see hunger continue to plague our state, our children, our seniors, or those in between. So forget your ideology and grab hold of the ideal that is bigger and better and will last longer than you do. And join us today in our mission to take hunger off the table all across Michigan. Thanks for listening to our show and for sharing our podcast. Gerry and I will be back next week. You come back and be with us. Good night, everyone.
Food for Thought has been a presentation of Farm Bureau Insurance of Michigan and the Food Bank Council of Michigan, creating a food secure state.